So hello everybody, today is Sunday the 28th of August 2022. I'm Neelu Chaudhari with Lee Kant, both in London, UK, and we are going to discuss about the Swissindo launch as it's now 9 years overdue, and Lee is going to give the reasons why everybody should be doing something to speed this up now, the launch, and what they can do and why they should do what they need to do, because a lot of people are asking why are the delays, and it's up to the people to wake up and to take the appropriate action. And Lee's going to tell us what that action should be. Over to you, Lee.
It's for everybody's duty to improve their understanding and comprehension of and the significance of the Swissindo documents and certificates. So it's wise to read through them again and again, repetitionally, and ask lots of questions, even if the person doesn't understand what they're actually reading. And to prove that is a useful exercise is by examining what happened 3 days after the 9th of September 2001, which was that an Emergency Powers Act was brought into being, and that effectively suspended all democratic processes. That act had the power, gave the power and authority for the White House to act above and beyond Congress. And it gave authority and power to suspend democratic processes. And this equally applied into all countries, into Europe, Britain, Australia. An example in Australia is that the Prime Minister seized 5 separate ministries for himself. So he not only was Prime Minister, but he was also the Minister of Interior Affairs. He was also the Minister for Health, the Minister of Defense. How can you have one person being a whole cabinet? I mean, there's only 30 different ministries in a cabinet, and he became almost the whole cabinet, which is a definition of dictatorship and complete abuse of all democratic processes. He rose above democracy, and he said, I have the power and authority to do anything above any democratic process. And also...
What's his name, Lee? What was his name?
Morrison. But also Boris Johnson did the same thing here in England. Boris said, I'm suspending Parliament, and I'm also taking what's called the royal prerogative away from the monarch, and I'm giving it to myself as Prime Minister. And in fact, that he was not the first Prime Minister to do that. Theresa May did it. She stole the royal prerogative from the Queen. She said, I am seizing and grabbing that power for myself, Theresa May. Theresa May, was, when they were getting rid of Cameron, Theresa May did secret deals behind the scenes to become the next Prime Minister. And one of the deals she did was to protect the High Court judges. So she got extra votes and extra support to become the next prime minister after Cameron, provided because she knew the crimes that the judges were doing and the fraud. And she said, look, if she became prime minister, those judges will not go to prison for their crimes. They will not go to prison for the frauds they're
So
doing.
wait, so let's slow down, Lee. So let's slow down. So you're saying, but so you said something else a bit earlier. So you said in 1963 something happened in America. Can you go through that again?
Yeah.
After they've shot JFK, they've put Mr. Sukarno in house arrest. So what
Right.
else did they do soon after that, which is similar to what they did in 2001 after the Twin Towers, and what you're saying that the dictatorships have already come into England by the time of.
But basically, during the Second World War, you had Ian Fleming and cabinet minister and a high-level general naval officer fly in the middle of the war, 1941 or 42. They flew from London to Portugal when Germany still had control of the air. The Messerschmitts had dominance, and they managed to fly to Portugal, Lisbon, and then from Lisbon across to New York with plans, the blueprints to set up the CIA, which is a non-democratic and unnominated body. In other words, the CIA is not a government body. It was never set up by the government. It never came about through democratic processes, like the police, for instance, came about through democratic process. It's authorized by Parliament, but the CIA is not authorized.
So you said that basically after JFK was shot dead and President Sukarno, the gold mandate was sabotaged.
Yeah.
By exactly the same template that they wouldn't allow it. They would rather kill the president of America than to allow the people of the world to be under gold.
Yeah.
And so you said that they put in somebody else who was in flight at the time, who wasn't on land. What was his name again?
Yeah. What happened was, on the exact same day, which is the 22nd of November, 63, an unelected public officer then became president. So you had, because Lyndon Johnson, or LBJ, he was never elected president of the United States. He was an agent for the CIA, who are an agent for the Wall Street bankers, because it was the lawyers. When Ian Fleming went to New York, he worked with lawyers in Wall Street who worked for the banks. That's how it was constituted and set up. So,
sorry, who's Ian Fleming, Lee? Who, for I don't know who
he wrote the 007 James Bond novels. And there's a lot of significance, occult symbolism within those novels that is concealed. He keeps it a secret. So it's all coded language, specially worded, so that it's not obvious. You have to sort of be educated to a certain level to recognize it. So it's like a secret language written within the novels. So these people are very cunning, they're very cagey, they're very clever. And so LBJ was never, ever elected democratically by the people of America. Only Kennedy was elected.
So let's just say, so the point we're making is, since 1963
63,
to this day,
correct.
That is like 60, nearly 60 years, there has been no democracy in America.
Because they rigged the voting numbers. The numbers are false. They will say Obama got, 23.8 million votes in this state, Alabama, but that's not true. He might have only got half of that, 11 million votes.
Well,
It's
we
because
know
it's
the
fake,
you know
fake numbers.
these are backdoor. There's question marks about how these presidents get into their positions, because they're not even born in the country where they become presidents. And
Everything is
they
fake.
don't even have the children that they purport to have, their own children, that these are not their children. And
Yeah,
they're not even, that's not a wife. That is not even a wife that they say is the wife.
that's right.
So
It's
there's a lot
fake.
of, so
Fake
the whole
photo.
thing is an illusion, it's a fraud, it's a deception. And so here we are with Swissindo, 9 years overdue. So Lee, you were going to say, why is it important now? Because we got distracted with all this other stuff. Why, historically, why we never had the platform for this peace and prosperity, because of all these monkey games that the media has been playing to deceive the people in line with these warmongering, destruction of humanity by the USA, pretending to be democratic.
That's right.
So now, so coming back to the Swissindo project, is that these people that we've talked about since 1963 had never any intention for us to be in peace and prosperity. And to this day, they still don't have that intention. They have every intention to stop it. So what is it, Lee, that people need to know? What is going to make them interested in doing something about it personally by their own actions? Over to you.
Well, again, it's to comprehend and understand the sequence of events that has occurred. And you could probably go back to 1887 when Swissindo was mentioned. And there's always been a strong link between Indonesia and Switzerland. And this is actually proven within the documents which Neelu discovered. Neelu counted the number of zeros of monies, fiat currency, that is deposited within bank accounts for each country. And the Swiss accounts have numerous more zeros in them. You mentioned the number of 157 zeros behind just one of the bank accounts in Switzerland, compared to, let's say, about 40 zeros in a bank account in Mexico. And look at the population difference. Mexico has several times bigger population than Switzerland. So therefore, that is incorrect. It's an inconsistency. So your comprehension has to then increase. You have to ask the question, why? What caused this to come about? Your understanding has to improve, because the trust account is basically the same as Swissindo. And you have to ask the question, how can Switzerland have more money in their banks for the population than a huge country like Mexico. And compare the size. Mexico is about 30 times bigger than Switzerland, and in geographical mileage terms. And that's because of the gold. The gold. Switzerland has a lot of gold held there, and it issues fiat collateralized by that gold. But it's, again, that's an abuse, because Switzerland was entrusted, the bankers were entrusted to lend the money to devastated countries that were destroyed by war. All the infrastructure had to be rebuilt. So the Swiss bankers would earn a big fee on lending that money to each central bank in Europe. And obviously the gold came from Indonesia. And also, I think when between the two wars, the First War and the Second World War, there were lots of shipping fleets sent by America to Indonesia to pick up gold. The gold deposits were put into ships and brought back to America for some strange reason. So that people need to research that. And also the fact that the American government banned the ordinary citizen from holding gold. It became an illegal act to hold gold, and that was undemocratic. No people in America wanted that. They were just dictated to and told they were not allowed to hold gold, which is a dictatorial system. It's the same as Nazi Germany. They're being forced against their free will to give up their true wealth and their true money, gold, in exchange for paper, fiat, fiat currency. So again, these war powers, in the First World War, America passed emergency powers which suspended the normal democratic processes and overrode the rights, the human rights of the ordinary citizen. And they're still using those, and probably during the Civil War, the 1861 to 1865, the White House probably gave itself emergency powers, dictatorship powers, to suspend any normal democratic processes.
This is Central Bank of Great Britain, and it has about 60 zeros.
60.
Yeah.
But the Swiss banks have 157 zeros.
Yeah, so there's no shortage of money. There's no shortage of money whatsoever.
But when you compare the population of the UK to Switzerland, there's a huge difference. Why should the Swiss have more money? So obviously the Swiss are lending out that money. And that's why, that's like Kennedy called them the gnomes of Zurich. In other words, the money men of Europe were based in Switzerland. They were the managers of money, the holders of money, the holders of gold. And so they had the expertise, the experience, and the knowledge to do banking and lending, and knowing how to make it a business. The bankers
There is a Switzerland
established
bank.
an industry, the banking industry. They were the experts at it during the 1800s, 1900s.
There's the 150 zeros.
157 zeros, yeah. The Central Bank of Switzerland, yeah.
Here's another one, the UBS of Switzerland. Again, over 100 zeros.
And look at the date, 1967 on the date, with 4% interest being charged as well.
There's so many UBS Switzerland accounts. They're all got a lot of zeros.
And they're dated 1967.
And wasn't there this scandal that the presidents of the countries were laundering their own money of their own countries belonging to their own people into Switzerland?
Yeah, that's right. It's mainly African countries who are doing that.
But you said Sri Lanka as well.
But don't forget, 6% is the normal interest being charged on fiat, and that would have been the profit margin of the Swiss banks. They were borrowing it from the Indonesians, or it being collateralized by the gold in Indonesia at 4%. And the Swiss were lending it at 6%, so they were making a 2% profit.
But even though, I mean, that, you know, had these documents refer to 2007, which was King Marcos in the Philippines. And then this document is that Anthony Santiago Martin and Marcos had an agreement. This was their agreement that Martin was the double for Marcos, so that Marcos could have a normal life. So King Marcos signed over his authority, and the Queen was aware of it. But then when the 14th of June 2010 happened, the meeting at the United Nations, because they'd killed Marcos and they'd killed Martin, then this moved on to His Majesty Mr. Sugihartono Tonegoro, whom we call Mr. Sino in Indonesia. So it was King Sukarno who passed it to Marcos to look after, so that, you know, nobody would suspect that it's the same gold, same central bank accounts of the world that we're dealing with. But then there was also that the reset of 2013 had to happen because the gold had to be distributed according to the population rather than this money was generated by the births, because the leaders had abused their own people by trafficking their own people abroad so that they could then steal their trust account monies. This is where the Switzerland accounts had accumulated so much money because the leaders had basically told their own people to leave the countries and go to America or Canada or England or Europe. You know, so all the professionals from the East went to the West, and they were basically brought into the profit-led corporate structure to take orders from the dictatorships. They had to comply with these. They couldn't be professionals as such, and this is why it's such a mess now, where people are wondering, how did the professionals get hijacked? But this is how, because they got trafficked not for the purposes that their professions were required in these countries, but because they were going to be dictated to by an invisible force. So their professionalism got hijacked. So all the professionals and all the royals they got tricked, and they got told what to do above their professional, you know. So basically you had to commit crimes or you lose your job. So all the professionals that you have are compromised, they're hijacked, and they are hostages within the corporate structure. And this is why the corporate structure has collapsed, because these people who went and signed all these central bank accounts that belong to the people have not honored the gold share, prosperity, and peace for their people since 2007. So now we're going to go to the document which replaced this 2007 document in 2013, which is the April calculations, April 2013. We just get to the bottom of this. So there's King Martin, who's really for King Marcos. And so
you could compare the signature handwriting style of Martin to Marcos and see the similarity of the style of writing there.
Oh no, but there was a consent, there was an authority. It wasn't illegal, it was legal. It was very legal arrangement. Yeah. It's what they commonly do, isn't it? So April 2013 is the document which we've gone through before. But this document was the reset of the 1 quintillion. We're only giving out 1 quintillion, which is still 2,500 times more than the global wealth on the planet. So payments 1 to 11.
That's the other point, Neelu, that people don't comprehend fully enough, which is Mr. Sino did the global reset back, as you say, in 2013. He did it. That's, everyone keeps raving on about the global reset, but because there was no enforcement of what Mr. Sino was doing, then it didn't, and they sabotaged, the bankers sabotaged what Mr. Sino was doing and Swissindo. And so it never came about. People never saw it. It was hidden, removed. It was like a war going on between the banks and Mr. Sino, a private war, a secret war, because they kept stealing the money that was deposited by Mr. Sino, and nobody knew about it. It was never publicly disclosed or exposed. Imagine Julian Assange didn't have WikiLeaks. Imagine that he only had the Guardian newspaper to write articles for, and the Guardian actually censored the articles of Julian Assange because they were told to sabotage his work. So we wouldn't know anything now. The 90% of what we now know would be a secret. All of these war crimes, all of the military action, that we wouldn't have a clue about that ever happening. It would all be top secret. And same with the alien files, that is still all top secret because the files are in the possession of the CIA. And they promised to never, ever release those alien files. They will never be exposed. And same with there's another file called the JFK file, and that's never, ever been publicly exposed. And there's loads of documents in that. And that's why the FBI raided the home of Trump, because they accused Trump of taking some secret files from the White House before when he was forced out by Biden?
Yeah, well, we don't really follow that, Lee, because all the presidents are under a gag about the gold
That's
mandate,
right.
so
They're under
we can't trust any of them.
their
They try,
control. That's right.
yeah.
They won't tell you the truth. In other words, the president of the United States will never tell you the truth.
So, you know, when
They'll
people talk
never
about Trump,
expose.
and I mean, this Biden looks nothing like the other Biden.
And he'll never tell anyone the truth. You'll never get a word of truth out of any of these public servants or elected officials.
Yeah, I
They
think
just won't
it's a
tell you.
distraction to actually name names of American presidents, because we've just made the point that there has been no democracy in America since they shot JFK and
That's right.
put Mr. Sukarno under house arrest. Nothing has changed regarding military control of the whole world by America
That's
since
right.
1963. And I can categorically remember in 1966 that why my late dad, a judge in India, had to come to England because all his fellow judges were being shot dead for not taking bribes in India. Indian judiciary has been under gun control since
Yeah.
the early 60s, and that would explain why a lot of people,
Yeah.
professionals, fled India and Pakistan back then. So we have to come to the conclusion that whatever you read in the papers and whatever you see on mainstream media and anything that comes out of America is totally criminally covering up the fact that it is a dictatorship.
That's correct. Because they're using the Emergency Powers Act, and they're also using probably the Civil War emergency powers signed by Lincoln as president. He also did dictatorial, authoritarian rulership behavior.
So just coming back to the point, Lee, about why people need to be concerned that we're 9 years into this gold reset. People keep talking about this gold reset. It's happening, it's happening, it's coming, it's coming. It's already 9 years overdue. That's the first point.
Yeah.
But the main point is that USA is a dictatorship on the planet with ill intent to keep humanity in poverty and slavery and basically total annihilation, ruin, total ruin. That's a policy. It's no good saying, you know, the latest attack, because you had the HIV 100 years ago that wiped out Africa. You had Indian child policy was 2 or 3 children, and China had a one-child policy. These policies are all designed to destroy humanity. And in England, hardly, you know, the population doesn't even, you don't even replace, there aren't that many children born in England. This is why the population of England has never gone up. That's why people come from abroad, because the population does not reproduce because of the slavery system. The system doesn't allow it. It says your children leave home at 16 and then they have nothing to do with their parents or grandparents. They're told to go away, don't come back. And there's no extended families, and those children have no guidance, and they have an early death. A lot of people die through alcohol, drugs, and all this other stuff that goes on that's dark, very dark. The recruitment through criminal networks, recruitment through prisons, and the whole thing in England is also extrajudicial. It's total as you say, Lee. Since Theresa May, it's been a dictatorship in England. It hasn't become a democracy.
It's, you see, the one single aim of a bank is to make profit and to ensure that whatever loans it gives out that it gets those loans repaid. So therefore, from that one single motive of a bank, they will deliberately plan wars. They will cause a war to come about, because only through war can you seize the government to support the bankers' aims. If there is no war, then the bankers cannot secure that single aim.
No, but it's a bit more complicated than that, Lee.
It is
Don't forget they displace, once they bomb a country, those people have to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
You've got nuclear bombs going off, you've got men being killed, and you've got women and children who are not protected.
Yeah.
And then, so those people become immigrants, and then, you know, only because they've been bombed, they were quite happy before they were bombed. So you've created this race of immigrants who were happy till you bombed them.
Yeah.
And now that the Western policies is that once they leave their lands for 7 years, those birth funds in their central banks of that country then become available to be transferred by the corrupt leaders that are put in.
Yeah.
So if you've got, say, you know, birth weight in gold, $100,000, say, and you go and bomb that country, 1 million people get displaced, well, you've just taken the money from their central accounts, because those people are never going to find out that the central bank account had their, and especially if they leave that country for 7 years, they've lost their rights. So this is why we had to have the reset in 2013, so that you got the gold per population as opposed to the gold per birth, because the people will keep getting displaced. That's to stop that happening. Yeah. But it's still going on. They're still carrying on with that old system, because they keep bombing and displacing and stealing the lands and denying people their trust accounts, funds to keep them in peace and prosperity throughout their lives. And we're 9 years now that this dictatorships, this military control, this war against humanity by the Americans is going on 9 years now. And people don't realize that the money that the banks say that they're lending to us is the money that's come from our birth trust account. That's the big thing. And then the banks have been making us pay interest on our funds. The bank never give us a loan. It is illegal to do debts and loans in the gold system. They are still in the gold system. They have been under a gold system for 77 years. That was never permitted, because that's why our birth generated the prosperity to last us a lifetime. That was it. So if they kill a baby at a young age, they get to steal the trust fund of that baby. This is how they've abused the babies, is that they were generating the trust funds. So it's better for them to just make lots of rape babies and kill them. And that's how they're stealing all this money from the charities, and the churches are producing all these babies, acquiring babies from poor families in India and stealing their trust funds, which is a very serious criminal network. Human trafficking of babies, human trafficking of women and children that have been bombed, where the men have been murdered, civilian deaths. Most of these wars have been of civilians. And most of the armies are killed in friendly fire, what they call friendly fire. So yeah, that's a bottom line, Lee, is that people need to wake up and do something about this. So people are asking, what can they do? So they can write to the Indonesian ambassadors in their countries regarding the Swissindo. What's Indonesia doing about it? The gold is there, Mr. Sino's there. And it's 9 years since he'd done the gold reset. When are they going to get there? You know, when is Indonesia going to release the funds of the world to the people of the country in which their Indonesian ambassadors are basically sitting on their prosperity, denying their prosperity?
And people can ask for a referendum on every major issue. People should not surrender and give up their natural dignity, their natural authority to some agent.
What does
Why
that
don't
mean? What does
people?
referendum mean, Lee? What does it mean?
Referendum means that everybody has an equity of voice, equity, equal authority to decide for themselves what decision they wish to make on any issue. So everybody is given a vote, the power of a vote, not Parliament. Parliament are not democratically elected here in England. Only 34% of the population vote in the national election.
So the referendum will be that the
They're
people
not,
have a voice regarding
government's
the
irrelevant.
Swissindo,
It's
regarding the Swissindo. So
to
what?
be, you must have 51% to be for something, an issue to be recognized, it must gain 51%. And none of the MPs ever got 51%.
So this is like a petition. It's like a public petition.
It's a petition like the Royal Commission. We've been doing a Royal Commission for 7 years now. You know, so we that is our petition. The People's Petition is the Royal Commission. We can institute it. Anyone can start a Royal Commission. All you need to do is investigate something. You don't need somebody to come and
But
tell
the
you what
but
to
the
do.
but the
You can
point is,
start it
Lee,
yourself.
the Swissindo International Law is that the gold was generated by the births of those who have now died, because the Swissindo, really, the United Nations organization, started on the 17th of August 1945. So now it's already been 75 years, almost 77 years. You're 77 years now. So most of those people originally, before that anyway, when it started, so they would have had a reset then in 1945, and then in 1963 or 67, another reset, then a reset in 2001, which was the Nasara Jasara Twin Towers coming down. And then they've had a reset in 2007, which that document with the calculations there, and then another reset in 2013. It's that one, the 2013, that would just be another reset because the populations have changed. It won't change much, but it would be reset again according to the population, but the calculations will still be payments 1 to 11, $600 per month per child, $1,200 per month per adult, $150,000 of corporate loans written off, $150,000 of private loans written off, credit cards, and a 1.2 million for people up to the age of between 17 and 21 to get their house, car, and trade set up. Which, if you don't have your own house and you're over 21, you will get that, because your 6 million is going to be spent on you over your lifetime. So whatever you need, you will have. And then there's $138.99 trillion per country quota, which I think is just the parent countries, and the same amount for the bank quota, which I think again is only for the parent countries. The 6 parent countries. So Indonesia is the lighthouse of the world, and then the 5 parent countries, I think, are America, UK, Russia, France, and can't remember. But the money, the 1,000 trillion has recently been sent to America, dollars, UK, South Africa, China, and Russia. So they've received, and other countries have received that money. So until the people claim it, the people realize this is all a fraud, and it's an attack against our peace and prosperity by the American banks, really, banks controlling everything. So,
but there are always groups that are trying to hijack and take over Swissindo and claim it for themselves. Like Haddison wants to seize Swissindo and take it over for himself. And Biden is trying to hijack Swissindo by spending, in the last 2 weeks, Biden spent $1.2 trillion. So he's embarked upon a huge spending program of trillions of dollars.
If you knew the guy, that you met him in real, you realize he's a script reader. Who's writing his scripts, Lee? Because he does not have any capacity to even understand what he's saying.
Yeah.
These are all script readers. They're all puppets. They're all hostages.
Well, that's been proven. Yeah, that's been proven.
So I don't know why people even quote anything that these people say, because these people are hostages. As we've said, since 1963, no president of America has been democratically elected.
It was a coup d'etat in 63, a coup d'etat,
so
a transition, a hijack.
America's never going to assist Swissindo. It's going to come from the people. The people have to wake up.
That's right.
We're not giving Swissindo money away like that. We're just risking our lives at the moment. Why we're doing this, and people are not coming on board because they're scared for their life. The reason why you and I, when we do a Zoom, nobody else comes on. Hardly anybody comes on.
The problem, Neelu, is that Swissindo will not come into being until the majority of the population want it to come in to support it. It won't happen. There has to be a 51% demand from 51% of the population.
So if anybody has got any questions, anybody has got any questions following on from this Zoom, and they would like to come on our Zoom to ask more questions, if we've missed anything, then they can contact us via my YouTube channel, which is currently on a strike for a week. So that's YouTube at Neelu Chaudhari, and that's
you could put it on Facebook. You could post.
The Facebook is facebook.com/groups/MC Neo, NEO.
And you can put it on Twitter, the link. So what people do is cut, paste, and copy the link off Twitter into a browser, and then they can play back the whole of a talk.
No, I'm just saying how people can contact us, Lee. It's a chat. They can do it through the chat in the Facebook, or through the YouTube on any one of our videos.
Or Rumble.
Chaudhari, Lou Lotus is my YouTube account.
Or on Odyssey, they could go to Odyssey, or
Odyssey, Neelu Chaudhari, yeah, they can do that. And Lee Kant is on Facebook.
Yeah.
Lee Kant standing against a big rock, bigger than him.
So I suppose that's probably enough for today.
Yeah, it's enough. We make this public. It's okay to make it public. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks, Lee. Thanks for your help. That's very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye now.
Bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.